My name is Philip Harrelson. I'd like to welcome you back again to the Barnabas Study. And over the last couple of weeks, I have spent several days just kind of dropping videos here and there about Brother Harrell, and just to honor him. He was a great man, great pastor, great husband, great father. And his funeral was this week. It's Friday now. And this past Monday was his homegoing memorial service, and so I was able to attend that. And I want to just make a few thoughts about another aspect of Brother Harrell's ministry that I think, if you're not careful, it can get lost in, and that's the matter of prayer. And of course, his brother-in-law, Brother Andrus, did mention the matter about Brother Harrell praying, and I had mentioned that as well in one of the previous videos when I was talking about David Brainerd's journal that Brother Harrell had mentioned. But whenever I got to the church there at Bridge City, obviously a lot of remodeling and painting and all that sort of thing taking place. From I think they've had one storm since I had been in there a few years ago, and the facility's just incredible. Looked fantastic, and the Family Life Center, just a lot of work has gone into that as well. But there's a back hall that when I started walking down that, and even before the funeral, I remembered I would stop in sometimes there in Bridge City, and it would be days where there would not be church services that was taking place. And there was one of those times, actually more than one, but there were several times where that Brother Harrell would come down those stairs. He had an upstairs study, and he would come down those stairs, and we would make the turn and start walking down the hallway. And over just to the left at the end of that hallway, and I didn't get a chance to go in there. It looked like they had turned it into maybe a coffee shop fellowship area, but he had mentioned that was the old sanctuary, and talked about just a lot of prayer meetings that had taken place in that before they built the current sanctuary that they're in at the present moment. But I remember one thing that Brother Harrell told me, which again was reflected in the obituary, that as the years went by, I think as John It and Daryl may have kind of moved on out of the house as kids do whenever they leave the nest. I think that vacations probably tapered off, and they did mention that Brother Harrell rarely took vacations, days off, that sort of thing. And I do know just from some of the conversations, and again, I look back and think there were a lot of times that I talked to him on the phone over the years, and he was pretty much at church 7 days a week. But one of those times that we were walking down that back hall, he was talking to me about praying and just the physical presence of a pastor being in the building, as he called it. And he said, you have no idea how much that you add to your presence just being in that church, walking through the sanctuary, up and down the rows of the pews. Obviously, most of us now have chairs, but just walking up and down, praying, putting your hands on those pews or those chairs and praying for people and for specific needs in the church. And then even out in the hallways, walking up and down those hallways and just praying and calling on the name of the Lord for the Lord to work and to just be there in that building. And I think that there is something certainly to that, and I've tried to practice that here in Dothan, certainly after I was able to leave the hospital and go into what we call quote-unquote full-time ministry, which I think our bivocational pastors, they're probably working harder perhaps sometimes than us that are full-time at churches. But I do think that there is something to be said about that matter of just walking up and down the hallways, and even sometimes outside the grounds, out in the parking lot, that if you're a praying person, and you're praying about the needs of that church. And church growth comes and goes, various techniques come and go, but the matter of that pastor's prayer life is pretty significant. And I remember there was a time where that Brother Harrell mentioned to me another author, and this has kind of slipped my mind until I started just kind of thinking over just some of the things that he had mentioned to me. But he did mention to me one time Matthew Henry. And of course, Matthew Henry came out of that Puritan era back in the 1600s. But one of the things that Brother Harrell did mention to me, and of course at the time, I guess I didn't maybe think it was a priority. Should have, but I didn't. But he did mention this book right here, and it's Matthew Henry, and it's called A Method for Prayer. And what it is again, it's just a book that talks about where that Matthew Henry talked about the matter about praying, and just in this aspect, what he does is again, there's a lot of part where that he goes through and works out various scriptures through prayer. But again, Brother Harrell did mention this book to me, that there were times where that he did talk about prayer. And Brother Andrus mentioned that during the funeral, that whenever he was a young man, I think he said he was maybe 14 years old when Brother Harrell really just impressed on him the aspect of the matter of just soul consecration, giving time to prayer, and those sorts of things. And I think that perhaps that sometimes that is as tremendous of a preacher that Brother Harrell was, you can't forget about that aspect that there was prayer that went on behind the scenes. And obviously we saw the public and listened to the public voice of Brother Harrell, but I'm just telling you now that the certainty that Brother Harrell was committed to prayer. And I would just plead with pastors and ministers these days, if you want passion and feeling in your preaching, there's going to have to be somewhere in the background where that there's some prayer that is involved with that. And whatever you have to do to get into that matter. And I'm afraid that a lot of times that trouble and challenges are what oftentimes puts us on our knees and causes us to give ourselves to praying. And the fact is that we have to develop a life of prayer if there's going to be any effectiveness in our lives. And I thought again about that when I was driving home. I left Bridge City it was right at 6 Monday evening, and drove for about 5 hours or so to Gulfport, Mississippi, before I got in around 11 o'clock or so. And so a lot of riding, and I was not listening to anything, just kind of riding down the road in silence, just kind of thinking over the service that day, and meeting the saints there again at Bridge City, and just the impact that Brother Harrell's life and ministry had in that one place from 1978 until March of 2019, that he just faithfully worked while he was there. So I thought I would share that with you about some of the matters of prayer and his involvement in that. So thanks for stopping by again, and the Lord bless you, and until the next time, we'll see you later.